Welcome to yet another video. In today's video, we're going to discuss on how you can legally sweep your personal credit the right way. So there's a lot of misconception when it comes to credit sweep, and we're going to separate that fact from fiction. See, the word credit sweep has become a buzzword in the credit repair community, and it's often marked as a magical solution to remove all of your negative items, some overnight and some within a few days. But let me give you a reality check. A legitimate credit sweep is a systematic approach that aggressively dispute inaccurate items based on itemization, and it practices the right under the Fair Credit Reporting Act in the structure and how we go ahead about and dispute it. And it's essentially not necessarily a loophole or a quick tactic like a band-aid, but rather it helps you for the long haul. We're going to leverage consumer protection laws that credit bureaus are technically and legally obliged to follow. And unfortunately, the term credit sweep has been opted by a lot of scammers. So understanding what is real or what isn't is very important, and I want you to stick around for this video to get the most out of this. So you may be already aware of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA for short. Essentially, this is going to be your legal weapon for disputing. The Fair Credit Reporting Act was passed back in the 1970s, and from that moment on, it was updated multiple times, and essentially gives the consumers the right to dispute any inaccurate information on their credit reports, especially if they believe it to be inaccurate, unverifiable, or simply not true. Some of the key sections are like 609, which is essentially a request for verification of information. You have the section 611, which discusses the procedures for disputing inaccurate information, and the section 623, which discusses the responsibility of the data furnishers alongside with the bureaus when it comes to when a dispute is handled. Essentially, these aren't just suggestions. These are federal laws that both creditors and the credit reporting agencies have to follow, and they essentially carry penalties for not complying. So obviously, we're very much aware of the 30-day rule according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This is the 30-day timeline to investigate negative items in your credit report. So when you file a dispute, the credit reporting agencies have about 30 days to investigate, sometimes 45 depending on if you have new information that is part of that dispute. Essentially what happens is, obviously, as soon as you file the dispute with the credit reporting agencies, they will go ahead and contact the creditors and start a file. And essentially, if the furnisher who the dispute is filed with from the credit reporting agency side isn't handled within a time frame, or they simply cannot provide adequate information, the bureaus absolutely must delete the item. And this is where the credit sweep methodology gains traction. Many furnishers, especially the debt collection agencies, don't maintain proper documentation. So what are some of the mechanisms that make information unverifiable, essentially the trigger to getting items deleted? So here's a couple of suggestions. Items absolutely must be deleted if they're unverifiable, if they have the wrong information or they're technically inaccurate, such as wrong balances, wrong dates, wrong account numbers, wrong names, if they're outdated, such as the 7 to 10 year rule in terms of how long a negative item stays on your credit reports, or if they're simply duplicate entries. Unfortunately, some debt may be reported more than once. And unfortunately, the bureaus have now the burden to prove that they're not in the wrong. And whenever the credit reporting agencies post information on a credit report, they have to provide proof that it is verifiable. And the job that we have is to ensure that we challenge all of the items that are unverifiable, inaccurate, potentially derogatory, and leave the burden of proof on the credit reporting agencies. So how do we go about the credit sweep process? I'm going to give you the step-by-step. The first step is obviously to obtain your credit reports so you can see all of the data in order to start the process. I would strongly suggest you go to annualcreditreport.com. Ever since COVID, they've been giving away a weekly report, and this way you can access it for free. Phase number 2 is essentially look at all of the negative items in those credit reports. Identify all of the derogatories. Look at them line by line. Identify any levels of inaccuracy or unverifiable data. Phase number 3 is research that negative item. Look at the information once again, post it out, and make sure that they're congruent across all of the 3 credit reporting agencies. Phase number 4 essentially is now to start drafting your dispute letters. It's time to start writing to the credit reporting agencies. Make sure that you include the exact system in terms of why you're disputing the item, what specific information about that particular item is unverifiable, inaccurate, or potentially just doesn't add up. Phase number 5 is now to send that dispute via certified mail with return receipts. You must have evidence. And anytime you're disputing with the credit reporting agencies, in order for you to take it to the next level, whether it's with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or simply working with us so that we can provide you an attorney that doesn't require you to pay anything up front, you still need proof, and that for certified mail is going to be your best bet. Phase number 6 is essentially now to track that negative item, specifically the disputes that went out, and see what's going on if they received the mail and if the dispute process has even started. And phase number 4 is basically repeat the process, as a lot of times credit reporting agencies may do stall tactics and say that they don't recognize that you're trying to dispute, or they congratulate you for making an effort, which invariably delays the 30-day timeline. Sometimes it may require a secondary or third dispute. However, if they're negligent or non-compliant, phase number 8, which is a bonus phase, is to essentially contact us so that we can help you provide the legal support in order to take it to the next level. So how do we go about strategically writing dispute letters? The best one is to use the FCRA citing method. Essentially, your dispute letter should include at least your full identification, at a minimum your name, your address, and the last part of your social. You should include the specific items that are being disputed. You should also include the reason for the dispute and any specific itemization of that specific derogatory information that can be verified or reviewed. And citing the Fair Credit Reporting Act, whether it's the Section 611, which is essentially stating that you are requesting an investigation according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act as a federal law. And the best thing to do is to keep the tone very professional, light, legally grounded, and not necessarily emotional. And as per usual, circle out or attach any specific proof you have to those dispute letters. So here's why the certified mails trail is important. It will cost you about $8 per letter, but at least you will have legal proof, essentially that you've done your job, you've delivered the letter, and that they've received it. And within that 30-day clock or the timeline, specifically when they receive it, that's when the 30 days starts, not from the date in which you filed your dispute. It's when the credit reporting agencies receive it, that's when the 30-day clock starts. And for some reason, if they fail to investigate within that timeline, you have proof that from the moment they received it and they have passed the 30-day timeline, you can now officially file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And of course, if we take it the legal route and we decide to take them to court, we have evidence that they've been negligent or have not necessarily complied with the respective timeline that the Fair Credit Reporting Act allocates to them. So everybody's been talking about the Section 609. So what exactly is the Section 609 strategy? The Fair Credit Reporting Act, Section 609 specifically, allows you to request the method for verification, specifically for any items in your credit reports. One of the most advanced tactics that I can recommend is send a Section 609 requesting proof of the original creditor agreement, complete payment history, and proof of your authorization of that particular account. Many debt collectors and furnishers purchase previous debt. They also buy them in bulk and unfortunately don't necessarily have documentation. And unfortunately, if they cannot produce it within a 30-day allocated timeline, the item must be deleted. This works especially well on old collections such as 5 years old, charged off accounts, and many debt that are sold to third-party debt collectors. So there's obviously several rounds. It could be round 1 versus round 2 versus round 3. Essentially, the persistence factor. Credit sweeps will require multiple phases and rounds of disputes. It's not a very quick solution. It's not a magic bullet. The first round should always be about disputing the negative items themselves. Sometimes you can expect anywhere between a 30 to 50% deletion rate. Again, these are just historical trends. Round 2, which is typically after you receive your investigation 30 to 45 days later, you can redispute items that have not necessarily budged or changed or have not been deleted. You can request additional verification citing the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And from that point on, you can expect possibly another 10 to 30% deletion. Round 3, which is another 30 to 45 days from there, this will be your final push for the stubborn items that are sticking around. You can change the dispute angle at that point. You can state that the account isn't necessarily yours if it really isn't. You can state the dates are incorrect, especially if you're itemizing the information and labeling it in your dispute letter. You can say your balances are wrong. There's just so many different combinations of things you can do. Essentially, the real thing is that furnishers stop to respond after the third dispute. Here's the big reason. It starts to cost them. So let's discuss that now a little bit further. The furnisher factor. Why some items delete easily. So you see, the thing is not all creditors are equal when it comes to responding to disputes. Creditors who are quick to verify often, such as major banks like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or original creditors who have robust records, or any recent accounts that are 2 years or less, are likely to ignore the disputes, unfortunately. Third-party debt collectors would purchase debt, medical billing agencies, small collection firms, accounts that are 5+ years old, or who, with creditors who have gone out of business, are the ones that are quicker to delete, as because they have a harder time providing the record or documentation. So here's the strategy. Focus your sweep on collection accounts or the older records with the highest ROI. Not to mention, you still want to mention and dispute the information that is even recent and even with the major institutions, but just keep in mind the difficulty factors. So when do we go ahead and escalate the dispute process to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? This is when the bureaus stonewall you. If the credit bureaus fail to investigate the items properly, even after they respond not in a timely fashion or even after a third round, or continue reporting these unverified items stating that they've made changes or they verified the information, escalated to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The process is very simple. You go to consumerfinance.gov, you start a complaint, and mention all of the steps that you've taken from your side, including all of the 3 dispute rounds, certified mail with return receipts, clearly indicating the timelines. And typically the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from then on will forward this dispute to the credit reporting agencies or any creditors that you're disputing with. And within a 15-day timeline, they should be able to receive a response. Of course, the bureaus will always face penalties for non-compliance. So let's discuss the do-it-yourself or the professional route when it comes to credit disputes or the credit sweep. You want to go do it yourself if you only have anywhere between 1 to 3 negative items, because it's easier to track, get organized, and just simply handle it yourself. You want to hire a professional if you have more than 5 negative items, complex situation, you don't have time to dedicate towards the dispute process, and you want things to be done in a manner that will help you collect legal evidence so that you can go ahead and get them taken care of for the long haul. So there are some red flags out there when it comes to credit repair, specifically the scams and some of the sweeps that are promised out there. Avoid companies that promise you overnight results, any specific score increases, or any type of guarantees. Some of them even might suggest you get a new identity like a CPN number. Go with credit repair companies that provide you a structured instruction, a roadmap that details out exactly the process in which they're going to take, and the ones that actually have worked with attorneys in the past who have the legal support system to provide to you and follow specific Fair Credit Reporting Act rules when it comes to disputing, as to provide you the protection legally so that you have a case, or else it's not worth it. The reality of the timeline when it comes to disputing is anywhere between 3 to 9 months. Realistically, there are, of course, the rounds that we're going to do, but also expect to take this case to the next level. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau might not necessarily give you the best outcomes, even after the 3rd round. However, with our legal team, we've been fairly successful in taking it across the finish line, specifically if they followed all the instructions that we provide them and have done so under the letter of the law, according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So the credit sweep philosophy, it's law, leverage, and patience. Here's the thing. Credit sweeps work because they exploit the law. They exploit the reality of the credit reporting agencies. And as we know, the reporting, specifically with creditors and credit reporting, is a game of volume. Bureaus and data furnishers collect millions of data every single month. They rely on a lot of automation and minimal autonomy for reviewing information, especially when they are forced to verify manual investigation. And if you know what you're doing properly and label it out the way they need to be done, you have a lot of leverage. So use the letter of the law to take advantage of this and do the sweep the right way. Patience and persistence through multiple rounds is going to get you to the finish line. Again, this isn't a magic wand. It's a methodical process using legal rights most people don't simply know. So with that said, I hope this video gave you some insights on what to do when it comes to a proper legal credit sweep and what to look out for. And as always, don't forget to join our community where we will have Q&A calls every Tuesday so that you can get more informed, ask questions about your process, or simply request help from our side. With all that said, this is Oli Tarafter. I'll catch you guys on the next one.